Are you a thief, a sorceress, or even a troll? Whatever you are, I'm sure you want to claim the crown of command for yourself. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we are going to be doing another Talisman 4th edition revised character guide. Now we've done a couple of these before. We have done the sorceress, we've done the ghoul, we've even done the thief, but now it's the time of the troll. So if you play Talisman, and this is all the base game only, none of the expansions, we thought we'd start with all the base game characters first. Then you might want some hints and tips of how to claim the crown of command. Talisman 4th edition revised from, well, Games Workshop own the license. This is the Fantasy Flight version. Fantasy Flight have stopped making Talisman now, but fear not, because the 4th edition is being reprinted. I think it's available now in the UK. It's by Coiled Spring Distributor. They're the ones that distributed it to the shops. So it is still valid. The new printed version is exactly the same as the Fantasy Flight version, but I don't think any of the logos are on there. So if you've got the old the Fantasy Flight version, the 4th revised edition, that is still relevant. It is still compatible with the new Coiled Spring distribution. So that said, let's crack on. This time we're looking at the troll and hints and tips for how to win. Now the troll, he starts in the crags. His alignment is neutral. He has 6 strength. I know, he's a tough guy. He has craft 1, so he's not that clever. And he can't really use any spells, certainly not to begin with. He has 6 life to start off with, 1 fate, and just like all of the other characters in the base game, I'm pretty sure, you only start with 1 gold. Now special abilities, he has 2 special abilities. The first one is you need not roll a die in the crags unless you wish to. If you choose to roll, then you must accept that decision. Whatever the result was, you have to accept it if you do roll the die. Unless of course you have a fate where you can re-roll, but that goes for any of the re-rolling of the fate decision. So if you want to spend a fate, you can re-roll a die if you're not happy with it, and then you can re-roll it, but then you have to accept that decision. And the second special ability is whenever you roll a 6 for your move, you can regenerate instead of moving, and if you decide to do that, then you can heal 1 life, and then your turn immediately ends. Now healing a life is always up to your starting value, and in this case for the troll it's 6. Now the troll's strength, ironically enough, is its brute strength. That is where you're going to be focusing on it, because he starts with 6. No other base character starts with 6 strength, so he's the toughest out of all of them. There's 14 characters in the base game. Now the special abilities do focus on survival and avoidance. That's what the special abilities are about. Are they going to help you in terms of powering up? Well, let's find out. Let's look at the first special abilities. It says you need not roll a die in the crags unless you wish to. If you do roll, then you have to accept that decision. So why is that particularly useful? Because you might actually want to roll the die in the crags, and therefore your special ability of not having to roll seems a little bit redundant. So the crags is if you do roll, then if you roll a 1, you're attacked by a spirit with a craft 4. 2 to 3, you are lost for a turn, you have to lose your miss a go. 4 to 5, if you roll either a 4 or a 5, you're safe, there's no effect. But if you do roll a 6, then a barbarian leads you out of the crags and you gain 1 strength. So you might want to take the chance and roll. You do start the game with 1 fate, so obviously, if you're not happy with that roll, you can change it with fate. But obviously you don't have to take a chance, because, as I say, 1, you get attacked by a spirit of craft 4. Now, certainly in the early game, you've only got a craft of 1, so you're going to be at a massive disadvantage. So you might want to avoid that. You obviously don't want to miss a turn because you'll be at a disadvantage because the other players have had an extra go than you. So you don't want to risk rolling a 2 or 3. So that begs the question, well, why then would you move to the crags? Because if you move to the crags and you don't want to roll, then it's kind of a waste of a go. Or is it? Because what happens is, obviously with Talisman, when you move, you roll the die to move and you get a decision. You can either go clockwise or anti-clockwise, left or right. As you don't go particularly in one direction. So you can choose, you kind of have to choose to go to the crags. Now, what happens is that it could be a chance that, say you're 3 spaces away from the crags, and you roll a 3 and you're 3 spaces away from another space. That other space might have something harmful to you that you don't really want to encounter. So you therefore would move to the crags. Now all the other characters would have to then roll. Obviously they can re-roll if they've got a fate, but if you haven't got a fate and you move there, you might not want to go there, especially if you have to roll and you get a 1 and you have to fight the spirit, craft 4. So you might intentionally go there just to avoid another harmful space. Because for example, the demon, there's a card in the adventure deck called the demon, and it's a spirit of craft 10. So if someone else has drawn that and they didn't defeat it and it's still sitting there, you might want to avoid that, obviously, because the spirit craft 4, you've got an actual chance of winning. There is also a card in the adventure deck called the maze. Now you would miss a turn if your craft is less than 5. Now again, in the early days of the game, your craft is 1, so you might not be leveling up your craft so much. So again, that maze, you don't want to miss a turn, so you would move to the crags. Equally, there could be an enchanter there, a stranger, which means that a character of 4 or more craft will grant you a wish. Well, if you move there, that's kind of redundant. So you think, well, I could go there and nothing happens, or I could go to the crags, and then you might want to actually roll the die. So the mage again, the spells, it sells spells to good characters. Again, you might think, well, that's kind of totally irrelevant, I might as well move to the crags. So you might have to go to the crags because, as I say, the demon will be there and you might want to avoid it. So it really only applies that special ability probably for the early part of the game, because hopefully your craft will improve so that then if you do go to the crags, you can take more of a chance, more of a risk, because one of the strategies is obviously you do want to gain that strength. So in the off chance that you roll a 6, you will then be able to gain that strength. So let's look at the second ability. That is, whenever you roll a 6 for your move, you may regenerate instead of moving. So if you choose to regenerate, then you can heal 1 life up to your life value, which in this case is 6. And that is very, very useful indeed. Nowhere in the outer region you can heal lives if you're a neutral character for free. You have to pay. Now obviously you start with 1 gold, so you could only really pay 1 gold to heal 1 life. If you roll, this is where I think this special ability is much better than the first special ability for the troll, because obviously if you're down to, you start losing your lives for whatever reason, if you've encountered spirits and your craft isn't good and you start losing lives, it's worth just missing that or ending your go. Heal up that life and that's all you do on that go. It's worth it, especially if you're down to 2 lives, because there are occasions where you can lose 2 lives on your go. You might get attacked by a spirit, and there might be an event that happens which means you have to lose a life as well. So if ever I get down to 2 lives, I instantly, whatever character I'm looking for, I do look to try and heal lives back up. So just to have that as a special ability is brilliant, and obviously that stays throughout the game, whereas the crags is a specific spot on the outer region. When you move up to the middle region, that first ability disappears. So those are the 2 special abilities, and that's what I mean by it's not necessarily going to help you power up as such, but it's going to help you avoid danger, and it's going to help you survive, especially obviously you can regenerate your lives. So what tactic to use then with the troll if your special abilities aren't necessarily helping you totally power up? How do you do that? Well, my suggestion would be you draw as many adventure cards as possible. If there is a space that says draw an adventure card, draw it, because your strength is your strength, and there are enough creatures out there that are going to be combating you in strength and not psychic combat, which is then you would use your craft. So you should be able to, you know, I think the strongest creature in the base game, so forget any of the extra adventure cards from other expansions, but if you're just playing the base game, is a 7. The dragon is the 7. I'm pretty sure that's the strongest creature. So you are pretty much equal to that dragon. You know, you're 1 lower, but you've got a good chance of destroying any creature that comes out that uses strength. So you kind of want to be going along and getting as many of those adventure cards, because obviously the more creatures you kill, the more trophies you can then collect and cash in, because if you collect 7 strength, so you could kill a boar for 3 and an ape for, I think it's 3, and then another boar. Oh no, boars are 1. Anyway, you collect all your creatures, and if they total up 7 or more, you can cash them in to get another strength, and that's what you want to do. That's ultimately how you win the game, is by gaining strength and gaining craft. But if you've seen our base game review, that goes into much more detail about actually how the game plays and what the objective of the game is. This is more hints and tips for each character on how to win the game. So the other thing I would recommend early on, especially early on, is because you are the strongest character, so whatever anyone else is playing, if it's just base game characters, you are going to be the strongest. So you want to be going after the other characters, land on them, especially if they have got weapons or if they've got objects that they've collected or they've bought, because a weapon will add 1 to your strength, which helps you out ultimately. There is armor. They might have, you know, bought some armor, or, you know, picked up an armor from the adventure deck. You want that, especially if they've got a talisman as well, because you need a talisman to win. And they might have some magical items that help you power up, and it's all about powering up. I feel the quicker you power up, the more chance you've got of winning the game. So those really are the tactics to help, you know, if you're using your strength. The special abilities, as I say, they're not going to necessarily help you power up, but they will help you to survive and avoid things. The downside to the troll, no spells to start with. Spells can be very powerful. Your craft is only 1, so you do need to build up your craft in order to get any spells. There is only 2, the other downside is there's only 2 special abilities compared to other characters. Some of the other basic characters have, you know, 3 or 4 special abilities, you've only got 2. And these, as I say, these abilities are passive. They are avoidance and survival rather than to do with powering up. And you only get 1 fate. Re-rolling a die that you don't like the decision to is really cool. If you can re-roll, so if you've got 2 or 3 fate, that can make a difference. But it's only got 1 fate. The strength, as I say, is the brute force, and I would say if you get 10 strength or 10 craft, that's a good time. That's sort of the minimum you kind of need to start going up and try and win the game, go through the portal of power. So you're only 4 off of that, but it's a good idea to try and get your craft up to at least 5 or 6 as well. Favourable places on the board for a neutral character: the outer region. Go to the graveyard. If you're neutral, you can replenish your fate value for 1 gold per fate. So obviously if you've got gold, you know, you start the game with 1 gold. So if you do spend your fate early on, then you could go to the graveyard and then spend that gold to get your fate back. Chapel. If you're neutral, you can heal up your life value for 1 gold per life. But obviously, because you're the troll, that special ability where you can regenerate, you probably won't be doing that. But that's always there. That's always handy. And if you go to the crags, as I say, you don't have to roll, but you might want to, because if you do roll that 6, you've got 1 in 6 chance, then you can gain that extra strength. Likewise, the space for the forest, you can roll a die, and it's similar to the crags, but if you roll a 6, then you can gain a craft. And I think that's quite a good odds, because you know the actual penalties, you lose a turn, okay, big deal, nothing bad there. And the other one is that you get attacked in the forest by a brigand, which is strength 4, well, you're strength 6, so it's always, you know, it's always going to be in your favour. So the risks, the rewards outweigh the risks, is what I'm trying to say. And also the city, the enchantress, you can gain a craft or a strength. You can roll a die, and again, there are various different outcomes. 1, you are turned into a slimy little toad for 3 turns. 2, you lose a strength. 3, you lose a craft. 4, you gain a craft. 5, you gain a strength. 6, you gain a spell. So again, the odds are quite good, but nobody wants to be turned into a toad because you lose all your objects and you're down to 1 strength, 1 craft, and it's hideous. You're turned for 3 turns. It's not brilliant. But if you're doing it at the earliest part of the game, you might not have many objects, so it might be worth doing that just to gain that craft or that strength. Places on the board to avoid. In the outer region for a neutral character, none. There's none that you will lose lives on. The middle region, again, none that are specific to neutral. There is the desert that if you don't have a water bottle that you could lose a life, but then that's for all of the character alignments as well. The best route to take for the inner region, more than likely you're going to be building up your strength because you're already starting on 6. That's not necessarily the case, but kind of that gives you the head start because you only, as I say, you only really need 4 more strength, but you probably want to be building up your craft as well. So the best way, if you've got a stronger character, if your strength is higher, will be going the crypt, dice with death, and the werewolf den route. Crypt, you roll 3 die and you subtract your total strength from that, and you move directly to whatever the result is. You want to be aiming for 0, which is the crypt, because then you then get to carry on. If not, if you get 6+, you're kicked out of the city, and there are various other places on the board that you'll be kicked out on. Then the next one is dice with death. You roll 2 dice for yourself, 2 dice for death. If the scores are equal, you do it again on your next go. If the score is lower, you lose a life, and then you dice with death again on your next turn. If it is higher, then you've beaten death, and then you go on to the next space on your next go. And obviously, because you've got that regeneration, I couldn't find anywhere that says you can't use that special ability to regenerate a life, so you shouldn't die if you dice with death. Werewolf den. You have to fight a werewolf. You roll 2 dice for the werewolf strength and then fight it. If you lose 1 life, and you then have to fight the same werewolf again on your next turn. So if it was a strength of 7 and you lost for whatever reason, I find that very difficult because you'd probably be on 10. But say you rolled a 10 for the werewolf strength and you lost. It's the same werewolf. It can't up its strength. So again, it's not too difficult. If you do defeat it, you then move on. You have to win against the werewolf in order to move to the next space. But again, because of your special ability, if you lose a life, you shouldn't lose. You can't really die. But you have to regenerate before you are down to 0. You can't go, I've lost my last life and now I'm going to regenerate. No, you have to regenerate when you've got at least 1 life left. So to recap, draw as many adventure cards as possible to get those enemies, get the strength enemies, so then you can defeat them, especially because you're on 6, to collect at least 7 points to then cash in for a strength point. You can land on as many characters early on as possible to steal gold or an object, because they are going to be weaker than you. They won't necessarily have time to power up. They might have an object, a weapon or whatever, but you want to grab those objects to help you power up as early as you can. You can visit the crags to gain strength, like we said. You can also visit the forest to gain craft. And you can visit the city to gain either craft, strength or spell. Now, if you do need a certain level of craft in order to cast a spell, so when you get 3, then you can have a spell. So you would wait until then. And also go the strength route, which is the crypt route in the inner region. And that, my friends, are the hints and tips of how to play the troll. Thank you so much for watching. Hints and tips of how to play the troll in Talisman 4th Revised Edition from Games Workshop. Hopefully you found them very, very interesting. We have done reviews of the base game of Talisman and also all of the expansions. So if you love Talisman and you're not sure which expansion to get next, check out our playlist on our YouTube channel. We have them all there, so you can just, why not binge watch them? Just watch them one after the other. And also we have done, as I mentioned before, 3 other character hints and tips as well. We are going to be doing all of the base game characters, and we're going to then eventually get onto all of the other expansions as well. We do have a Kickstarter project that is happening, so you can check that out on our channel for more information. And obviously we do have a Facebook group. We can click you click the join button and we'll add you in. Search for the Bottled Imp Fellowship. There's going to be loads of information about our Kickstarter project, and also we do have a website as well that's got lots of good stuff there. Go to www.thebottledimp.com. Until next time, fellow imps, remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're a troll.